So then they told us we were going to go down on the river and cross over. And kind of strange because when we were at Camp McCoy, we trained with these boats, and they were, well, this is not a very good drawing, but I'll read a little bit of this too. I couldn't find the thing I wanted. But anyway, they were, and this was they were wooden boats, and it came up at an angle, but then the back was straight. Now that probably would fit in here, except the doors would have to be a little wider and back, and it could take a squad of men, 6, 7 men. And we had trained with that, and I remember in launching and all, not that there's that much to it. And at any rate, we went down that one night, 2 or 3 nights later, and of course, once the Germans knew that we were coming across, well, they opened up with whatever they had in their pillbox and everything like that, and it was, it's so strange in life. I mean, I've had like this auto accident. If I'd been sitting 6 inches to the right, I'd have been dead. That thing came through, and fortunately didn't hit anybody. It came between my wife and myself. But this was the same sort of thing. Once in a while these things happen. Once we were training in the barracks, and this fellow had a rifle or something, and he fired, and he didn't miss my head more than 3 inches. Just so people can die that way too, like this famous athlete that was shot overseas in the Middle East, in Iraq, some football player or something. I've forgotten who he was, and it was quite the news, and these things just happen. But anyway, I remember we were dragging the boats down that street, and everything's a flash, and before that we'd gone by they said, well, you go ahead and put your mortar here, and it was an old cabbage patch is what it was, and had been. And so we get it all set up, we think, boy, we can really bombard them. And then this 155, which is 25 millimeters, that's a 6-inch on a carriage, and they pulled in, and they really started loading some stuff over there and everything. Then they moved us out, and we joined. We're going to go on down and make the assault. And I remember the lieutenant, we were all just standing there, and he just happened to pick me, and I was a corporal, and no big rank certainly, but instrument corporal to operate the gun and stuff like that, as far as mortar goes like this. And so if somebody behind a hill, if it's an artillery, it'll go over and miss him. But at any rate, I remember he said, and there's all this light and flash about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and he said, Corporal, you take these 3 or 4 men, and he showed us a house down the street there, and he said, you take these men down there, and you wait, we'll pick you up later. And and so I remember them going down that street, and I could hear, the flash and then the explosions and things, not right, but just around them, some distance, maybe a block or 2 away or something like that. And then the boats they hit on the cobblestone street, and they went around the corner, and almost every one of them was killed and drowned within an hour of that. Oh, of course, we didn't know that right then, so we went back and got in this house and went down the basement, and there was a stove down there, and well, let them shell. And we found some homemade jam, one thing and another, and so we stayed there the night, and we got up, and the next morning, we got up at about noon or something. The lieutenant came back, and he said, let's go on down the river now. And so what had happened was that somewhere along the line, they got down there. We never knew the whole story, and their boats, well, first place, a mortarman, not the gunner. The gunner, all I would have, I wouldn't have a rifle. I would have had a .45, which, you don't want a lot of heavy weight, and the river was in flood stage. And normally it wouldn't be any wider from here to over there in the corner, maybe 20, 25 feet. But it was way up even over the trees. This is a little article, I'll just read a little bit of this. Sure. But at any rate, they went down there, and some of the boats tipped over or whatever happened. And Mayberry, my sergeant, and all that were drowned or killed. And of course, we didn't know that. The next morning, we went, And of course there's no bridge across or anything, but they did have some boats for us, and we went across, and there was a first aid man over there and was tending to a couple of people. And we went up the hill, and I said, oh, let's go in a defensive position here and either take one of these German foxholes, you probably heard about foxholes, and or dig your own. And so we were there probably maybe 4 or 5 days. There was some shelling, but not really that much. But I wanted to read a little bit. This fellow describes it. Now this is also the 417th Regiment, which I was in, but it was Company L. I was in Company B or C or something. But this is, and I think this is more or less describes what happened to these other people. I went overseas as a BAR, Browning Automatic Rifleman. That's a rifle. The 76th Division, 417th Infantry Regiment. For some reason, they don't have a lot of material on the 17th. Company L. Even a little bit I saw, I could appreciate this. Of all the acts in which we took part, two are indelibly etched in my memory. The first is our assault across the river, and he talks about being temporarily captured by the Germans. We had finished up in the Belgian truck to Echternach, Luxembourg, the city in the bank of the Saar River. The Siegfried Line starts across the river. We faced not only crossing the swift river at flood tide, but also ferocious defending by camouflaged pillboxes and fortresses. We met flat-bedded trucks about a mile west of the river. These trucks carried these wooden scow-like boats, and that's what I described to you. Were stacked on trucks and nestled into each other. Each squad carried its own clumsy, heavy boat to the edge of the river, and it was that. Then you got down on your knees, and see, and you'd be. But some of these ammo characters, they had a thing that slipped over for your head, and there was 3 ammo shells in the front and 3 in the back, which probably be 40 pounds. Oh hell, they got in there. They were down. And then they just went down in the river, and then the Germans had also put the concertina, which is barbed wire, and the fellas would get their leggings caught in that and held them down. See? So probably as many died from that as anything, but just a little bit. It's about a mile west of the river. By this time it was dusk. We could hardly see the river several hundred yards below us, but we could see the opposing German cliff, which loomed higher above. I suppose it's supposed to be a prize assault. But we started receiving artillery fire and so forth. Our company and I suppose other companies to either side started down, but couldn't get very far before the boats broke loose, banging into trees, and the guys running over boats, crushing into trees by boats, screams and star shells, flares, turning dusk into day. It was a scene out of Dante. Many were wounded. By this time I was officially assistant. By this time I was officially the assistant squad leader. And this is interesting. I never heard of this happening before, but I wouldn't doubt it. But since the squad leader had just shot himself, and then SIW is in their self-inflicted wound, so he just committed suicide. The boat was mine, and he goes on. We shoved off, and then he just goes on. But I just can't imagine what that would have been, and I just missed that because maybe I was standing in the right place. It just